to get on as soon as I could, with everything going on, and just, be proactive, continue to be proactive. I've been signing a lot of petitions. I've been trying to just,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah,
That's what I've honestly been doing, is signing petitions, calling city council members, writing emails, that whole thing,
okay.
which is honestly really helpful. Like the more the merrier.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're like talking with other people, especially other white people, like being a voice and like um, honestly, education has been huge for me. Because I have a lot of other friends who are also white and other ethnicities, and
Yeah.
uh, I think a lot of it was realizing how uneducated they were and not realizing that that was like, because they always felt like I'm not their only Black friend. Like it's not like I only hang out with white people type thing, but they didn't realize how much the school system had failed them in terms of what they knew about Black culture and what they knew about what was happening in America.
Yeah.
So just learning more about that. So when you are in conversations with people who don't know, you can be a voice of education and not just like, no, you're wrong. It's like, no, you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. And I think education, and there's times, yeah, I mean, through this process that I didn't know the full extent of Juneteenth. I didn't know
Yeah.
the full extent of Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
We weren't taught any of that in school. We weren't
Yeah.
taught the history. I mean, it was just slavery, and it was just this blanket thing, like, okay, there were slaves, but it
Yeah.
wasn't
And
that.
then they weren't.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And the extent of the brutality,
Yeah.
I read one story, and I can't remember, I think it was in Louisiana or Alabama, where they would feed Black babies to alligators as bait,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I'm like, what in the
Yeah.
world? Like, shocking to me. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It's like and I've shared some of the things that I've been learning, and to my white friends, and they don't, never heard of it.
Yeah. And
And
I didn't realize how little or how much education I had to have about my culture that was outside of school. That I didn't realize how little was happening in school. Like I learned about these things being in Black culture and like researching it myself, like
yeah,
what really happened during here.
yeah,
But realizing like me researching it myself, I had an assumption other people knew about it, and realizing like whenever I post something that I thought was common knowledge, I'll get like 10 DMs of like, oh my gosh, like
wow,
I just learned about this. Thanks for sharing. And
yeah,
it's like, wow, like I definitely thought we were all getting the same information, but we're not.
yeah. What do you think the why is, I mean, I guess maybe because it's not in schools, but maybe why are people not learning it, or why are people not inquisitive about it? Where do you think the lacking there is?
I think it's not needing to be inquisitive about it that made it so easy, and then also just not realizing there was something to be inquisitive about. Like I was even talking to my sister today. She and I, of course, had a lot of similarities in growing up, but we realized we had a living skills teacher who happened to be the sister of LeVar Burton, who is Reading Rainbow, Roots,
Yeah.
like, and we went to a predominantly white school in one of the most affluent areas in the country, in Palo Alto.
Okay.
And the fact that, like, it was a mandatory class to take her class, and she was like Black Studies, like, but it was mandatory for every student to take her class.
Mhm.
And we were realizing at the time we thought she was almost like too pro-Black and like too much like we need to know, and like she really enjoyed making people feel uncomfortable about learning a lot of what was happening, but realizing like we would have never even known to be inquisitive about certain things had she not been a teacher at our school. Like there was no other way of us knowing.
Yeah.
Until college, of course, and you take like a Black Studies class, or
Right.
you take, you know, and if you're not taking Black Studies, like there's so much you learn in Black Studies that's just American history.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just not in textbooks.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't know about the Tulsa, you know, Oklahoma, and like I like only knew about it because of Miss Burton, and I'm realizing like if there's no Miss Burton in every high school, like
Yeah. That's
it's
cool.
not in textbooks.
That's it. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So if you're not seeking it, there's no way of you knowing. There's no way of you knowing that Central Park was based off of a thriving Black community. There's no way of knowing about Wall Street if you're not surrounded by people who talk about it, or like you're not educating yourself about it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very strategic as to what happens in America that they don't want people to know because it's inhumane.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
So why seek the inhumane? I mean, how long did it take us to realize Christopher Columbus was just a massacre and didn't, you know,
Yeah, it wasn't freedom.
wasn't about freedom, didn't come here to, he didn't even discover the United States. Like he did not do anything but kill people. It took us how many, you know, decades and centuries to know.
Yeah. 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 No,
So,
that's real. And you're taught that he did, you know, he sailed the ocean blue and he was
yeah,
a great character. And you're like, what? There's like songs. I'm like, what?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But you have to have song. I mean, a lot of it is propaganda. Like you
Yeah.
have to, like, they had to make it propaganda so that so people complied and believed in the lie. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you heard about the use of watermelon to like change the fact that, you know, making watermelon, the fact that Black people like watermelon a stigma, as opposed to before it was a sign of wealth. And they successfully made it a stigma with media, because before, when Black slaves came out of slavery, they found watermelon plantations, and that's how they made a lot of their wealth, is because people sold watermelon, and they sold watermelon, and white people didn't like that it was working. So they teamed up with Disney, made a campaign. Negroes love watermelon, and made it a stigma. So Black people thought having watermelon was something to not be proud of. And now it's a stigma we still think about. Like, people are still scared to eat watermelon because they're worried that like people are going to be like, yep, that's what we thought. And it's like, it's perpetual,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
systems that
Yeah.
it's our life. I mean, the Native Americans are going through the same thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this has been a wake up call for a lot of ethnicities, but I think we need to focus on what's at hand now and how we can change, and how, you know, even voting. I think voting, how do you feel about, I mean, obviously vote, not like how do you feel about it not to vote, but do you feel like that's really making a change in, because some people just say nothing's going to change. Why do I need to even vote? I don't need to, you know?
yeah, I had a few friends who were like that when Trump was running. And I remember having arguments about that, just because I personally have seen the difference a law can make and how long it takes. Even if a law is made, just like even if slavery is abolished, it definitely takes a lot of change in mindset to make something abolished. Like,
Right.
but if it was still legal to have slaves, do you think that thing would still,
Yes.
like, we would be having this conversation?
Right. Right. Right.
So there needs to be a law to base an argument off of. And then, of course, the mindset of the people eventually have to come too. So yeah, I think voting is huge. I think it's necessary. A lot of what is helping now is having laws against things that are unjust. So I think voting is hugely, immensely important.
Yeah.
And anyone who thinks that it's not, like, it's the only power we have in America.
Yeah.
Like, other media and voting, to
Yeah.
me, is everything. Media, education, voting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like 100% the only reason why America is thriving.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and free labor, but we'll get into that.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. One thing that this week or I guess it was last week, really came up that someone had said that, racism, oh,
Oh, we almost are about to, yeah.
we're almost there. But one of the things, last thing, was that racism was political. And
Yeah.
saying that, it's what sin is sin. We got to focus on God. We can't get into politics and
Yeah.
racism is. And it's so, I just was crying. I just literally was so angry. And
it's blatant in the Bible that it's not cool.
Exactly.
The Bible.
Exactly. Right. It is so blatant, and it's so obvious that God hates it. And it's like, how do you respond? And that's my last question. How do you respond to that? Like, I literally sat there, the person had said it, and I was just shocked.
Yeah.
And I left just so upset and crying and just drove home. And I'm like, how can you think like that? Like, I don't understand, and maybe it's a lack of reading the word and really digesting it properly to see.
Yeah.
It's very clear. I don't think there's anything to try to figure out.
Yeah.
It's the lack of that. But yeah, that I don't understand.
I mean, a lot of people, and I'll try and say this as fast as possible since we're going to get kicked off, but a lot of people learn Christianity from other people as opposed to learning it for themselves. Like, it's just easier to hear a preacher tell you about something. So if that's how they learned how to do their religion, as opposed to, and this is what I realized growing up,
Yeah.
you learn how to do your religion from somebody teaching you how to do your religion, as opposed to opening up and using the tools of the religion to become somebody who's close to God or that entity.
Yeah.
So if you're taught by somebody who is racist with a racist agenda, that this is how to use this Bible to be like, to live, then you don't go into it yourself. And if you have questions and you ask somebody and their agenda is still that, you're going through the Bible through the lens of a person as opposed to through yourself. And I realized that younger, because I knew so many adults who were like, I had my, parents' God, and then I had to discover him for myself. Yeah. And they always used to say that. And I was like, well, since I'm young, like, why don't I find it for myself now instead of having my parents' God?
Right.
And learning it through the eyes of, this is what Jesus wants. This is his character. This is the life that he's living. And like understanding when you're being taught to like filter through what you hear from him as opposed to what you heard from that person, so that it's not their lens that's teaching you, it's their knowledge that's teaching you, and you using it through the lens that through the character of Jesus.
Yeah.
So like, you can't, just like anything, you can't fault them for their lack of knowledge. All you can do is try and enlighten them about it, and like use their word against use the word against their knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus did. I mean, like, that's all he did was combat religion.
Yeah.
It's like all he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's so easy to pervert for your own personal gain.
Right. That's it.
And all he did was come here and combat religion.
Yeah.
For relationship.
Yeah.
Like, that's his purpose and that's what he's here for. So like, people are going to use it for evil.
Yeah.
They've been doing it since the beginning of time. So it's like understanding that it sucks, obviously, that they still are doing it, but how talking to God about how to speak to somebody in what he would want, his love, to transform a person, as opposed to you trying to make the transformation in that person.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's harsh words, sometimes it's loving, sometimes it's just like, what is Jesus's agenda? Like, I used to hate people with picket signs at college. Like Like, really? You're gay, you're going to hell? Does that, in
Is that going to help?
in the Bible, is Jesus like, make sure you do this every day so people feel hate and condemnation instead of love?
Yeah.
Like, how much more hurt are you doing than you're doing good?
Absolutely.
And I would have conversations with people on college campus about that all the time, because it angered me so much to realize like there's a whole massive group of people who feel alienated from like the best love that I've ever received in my life because you decided that your version of love was hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, yeah. So I'm still working through it, but that's the lens that I've been trying to work through.
Yeah. And it's
Is how do I communicate the biggest commandment, which is love thy neighbor and thyself, rather than my personal agenda of what I even think.
yeah.
Because they're using their personal agenda to
Yeah.
even. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so helpful. Thank you, Lola. Thank you. I know I'm so sad. I don't want us to get cut off. Does it just start cutting you off? Will it just die?
It just dies, yeah. So we'll try and say goodbye regularly.
I love you. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we'll do this.
For,
have a panel, and I'm going to note all these things down, and yeah.
Thank you so much for even making the space for it. So
thank you. I love you. I love you. I'm going to pray us out really quick.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you for this time, God. Thank you, Lord, for who you are. Thank you for